Admiral Kexon stood before the massive viewing screen in the command center of Battle Station Omega, watching Earth turn slowly in the void. The blue-green marble looked so innocent from this distance, so fragile. It was hard to believe this tiny world had caused the Zephyrian Empire so much trouble. "Sir, the Kronos engine is ready for final testing," reported Commander Yalesh, her scaled hands dancing across the control panel. The bioluminescent markings along her neck pulsed with nervous energy. Kexton's 4 eyes never left Earth. In the past century, humanity had expanded from this single world to over 300 systems. They reproduced like insects, spreading their chaotic influence wherever they went. Unlike every other species the Zephyrians had encountered, humans refused to submit. They fought with a desperate creativity that had cost the Empire millions of lives. "Tell me again how this weapon works," Kexton said, though he knew the answer. He needed to hear it one more time before they committed to this path. Dr. Vexmore, the Empire's leading temporal physicist, stepped forward. His elderly frame moved carefully, but his mind remained sharp as a quantum blade. The Kronos engine creates a localized temporal field that can reach back through time itself. Instead of simply destroying Earth today, we eliminate it from ever existing. We target the moment 4.5 billion years ago when the planetary disk was forming around their sun. "And the consequences?" Kexton asked. "Humanity will never have evolved. Their expansion, their resistance, their entire species, gone from the timeline. The Empire will have always controlled this sector of space." Vexmore's voice carried the confidence of someone who had spent decades perfecting this technology. Kexton nodded slowly. It was elegant in its brutality. No massive fleet engagement. No costly siege. No martyrs for humans to rally around. They would simply never have existed at all. "Begin the charging sequence," he ordered. Throughout Battle Station Omega, energy began flowing into the Kronos engine. The massive device occupied the entire central core of the station, its crystalline components humming with power drawn from 3 captured stars. The Zephyrians had built their empire on superior technology, but this weapon represented the pinnacle of their achievements. "Sir, we're detecting unusual readings from the engine," Yalesh reported. "The temporal field seems to be fluctuating in ways we didn't expect during the simulations." Vexmore moved to examine the data streams. "Curious. The field appears to be resonating with something, but that's impossible. There should be nothing in this time period that could interact with our temporal matrix. Could the humans have developed countermeasures?" Kexton demanded. "Impossible," Vexmore replied immediately. "They lack even basic temporal theory. Their most advanced scientists think time travel violates causality. They couldn't have built anything to interfere with the engine." On Earth below, the billions of humans went about their daily lives, unaware that their existence was about to be retroactively terminated. Ships moved between orbital stations. Cities glowed with artificial light on the night side of the planet. Children played in parks while their parents worked in offices that would never have been built. "Temporal field at 60%, Yalesh announced. 70%. So, the resonance is getting stronger. I'm seeing harmonic frequencies I don't recognize." Kexton felt a chill run down his spine. In 1,000 years of warfare, the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered technology they couldn't understand. "Doctor, what exactly are we looking at here?" Vexmore's scales had gone pale. I don't know. The field is interacting with something embedded in the quantum substrate of space-time itself. Something that predates our arrival in this system. 80% charge, Yalesh continued. 90%. So, recommend we abort the firing sequence. These readings are completely outside our projected parameters. Kexton stared at Earth. His people had sacrificed everything to build this weapon. Entire worlds had been stripped of resources. Generations of scientists had devoted their lives to this moment. The Empire's entire future depended on eliminating the human threat. "Continue the firing sequence," he ordered. "Sir." "Continue." 100% charge achieved, Yalesh said, her voice tight with fear. Kronos engine ready to fire. Kexton took a deep breath. Fire. The Kronos engine erupted with brilliant light. Temporal energy lanced out from Battle Station Omega, reaching back through the centuries and millennia, targeting the formation of Earth's solar system billions of years in the past. The weapon that had taken a century to build and cost the resources of 50 worlds was finally unleashed. But something went wrong immediately. Instead of the clean, directed beam they had tested in simulations, the temporal energy began to curve back on itself. The mysterious resonance Vexmore had detected grew stronger, creating feedback loops in the quantum field. Alarms began screaming throughout the command center. "The beam is deflecting," Yales shouted over the chaos. "It's not reaching the target coordinates." Kexon watched in horror as the temporal weapon's energy twisted through dimensions he couldn't perceive, bending back toward its source like light caught in a gravitational lens. "Shut it down. Emergency shutdown." "I can't." Vexmore's hands flew over his controls. The field has achieved temporal lock. It's sustaining itself now. The twisted beam of Chronos energy struck Battle Station Omega, but instead of destroying the massive structure, it did something far worse. It began erasing the Zephyrian Empire from history itself. The first sign something was catastrophically wrong came when junior technician Plexere simply vanished from his post. One moment he was monitoring the temporal field generators. The next moment there was just empty air where he had been standing. His colleagues turned to stare at the vacant space, confusion written across their faces. "Where did Plex go?" someone asked. "Plex? Who's Plex?" replied another technician, already forgetting the name. Commander Yalesh felt reality shifting around her like sand through her fingers. The memories of her childhood on Zephyr Prime began to blur and fade. She could still remember her parents' faces, but their names escaped her. The academy where she had trained for the Imperial Navy became fuzzy in her mind, details dissolving even as she tried to grasp them. "Dr. Vexmore," she called out, fighting against a growing disorientation. "What's happening to us?" Vexmore was hunched over his instruments, his 4 eyes wide with terror as he read the data streams. "The temporal backlash is unraveling our timeline. The weapon was supposed to erase Earth's past, but something redirected the Chronos beam. Now it's working backward through our history instead." On the main viewer, Admiral Kexon watched in fascination and horror as sections of Battle Station Omega began to flicker in and out of existence. Entire corridors that had housed thousands of crew members were simply gone, as if they had never been built. The space they had occupied showed only stars and the distant glow of Earth. "How far back is it going?" Kexon demanded, though speaking was becoming difficult. He could feel his own memory starting to fragment. The Battle of Kepler Station, where he had earned his first command, had that really happened? The faces of his old crew were becoming stranger to him by the second. "I don't know." Vexmore's voice cracked with panic. "The effect appears to be accelerating. We're losing approximately 10 years of history every few minutes. At this rate, the Zephyrian Empire itself will be erased within hours." Throughout the command center, more personnel were vanishing. These weren't just deaths. It was as if they had never existed at all. The universe was editing them out of its story, removing every trace of their lives and accomplishments. Weapons they had designed, battles they had fought, children they had raised, all of it dissolving into nothingness. Yalesh grabbed onto her control console as another wave of temporal distortion washed over the station. "Sir, I'm reading massive Chronos field fluctuation throughout the Empire. Every Zephyrian world is reporting the same phenomenon. Our colonies they're just gone. The entire outer rim has been erased from history." Kexon tried to process this information, but it felt like trying to hold water in a broken cup. The outer rim colonies, had they really existed? He could almost remember the report from frontier worlds, the proud messages announcing new settlements and successful terraforming projects. But now those memories felt like dreams, insubstantial and fading. "The humans," he said suddenly, focusing on the one clear thought remaining in his mind. "What are they doing? Are they experiencing the same effects?" Dr. Vexmore checked his readings, his scaled hand shaking as he worked. "Negative, Admiral. Earth and all human colonies are completely unaffected. The temporal distortion appears to be specifically targeting our species' timeline. That's impossible. Our weapon was designed to work on planetary formation, not species-specific targeting." "I know what's impossible." Vexmore snapped, his scientific composure finally breaking. "This entire situation violates every principle of temporal mechanics I've spent my life studying. The Chronos field is behaving as if it has intelligence, as if it's deliberately hunting down our historical threads and severing them one by one. Another section of the battle station vanished, taking 50 crew members with it. But it wasn't just their deaths that horrified the survivors. It was a way their comrades instantly forgot they had ever existed. Photos disappeared from personal quarters. Service records vanished from the ship's computers. Even the slight impressions their bodies had made on their bunks were smoothed away, as if the universe was meticulously erasing every sign they had ever lived. Yalesh found herself staring at a medal on her uniform, trying to remember what battle it commemorated. The golden star felt heavy in her hand, but she couldn't recall earning it. Had there been a ceremony? She thought she remembered her parents being proud, but their faces were already becoming strangers to her. "Admiral," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I think I'm starting to forget who I am." Kexon turned to look at her, and for a moment he couldn't remember her name or rank. The knowledge came back after several seconds of concentration, but he could feel it slipping away again. Soon, he realized with cold terror, he wouldn't be able to hold on to anything at all. "Doctor, is there any way to reverse this process?" Vexmore was frantically working at multiple consoles simultaneously, his movements becoming increasingly desperate. "I'm trying to modify the Chronos field, but every solution I attempt gets erased before I can implement it. The universe itself seems to be preventing me from finding a fix." "What do you mean?" "Watch." Vexmore input a complex sequence of commands designed to create a temporal shield around the battle station. As his fingers moved across the controls, the equations appeared on his screen for a few seconds, then vanished completely, as if they had never been entered. "Every countermeasure I design gets retroactively prevented. It's as if the timeline is actively defending itself against our interference." Kexon felt a chill that had nothing to do with the failing life support systems. "Are you saying the universe is fighting back?" "I'm saying something is fighting back. Something that was apparently protecting Earth all along, and we were too arrogant to detect it until we tried to destroy their world." On the main viewer, Earth continued its serene rotation, unchanged and undamaged. But now Kexon could see something else, faint geometric patterns in the space around the planet, like crystalline structures made of pure mathematics. They pulsed with the same frequency as the temporal distortions destroying his people. "Doctor," he whispered, "what exactly are we looking at?" The geometric patterns around Earth were becoming more visible by the minute, as if the failing Chronos weapon had somehow made them apparent to Zephyrian sensors. Dr. Vexmore stared at the readings in growing amazement and terror, his scientific mind racing to comprehend what he was seeing. "These structures," he breathed, his voice filled with awe, "they are not built from matter. They are constructed from pure temporal energy, woven into the fabric of space-time itself. Admiral, these patterns extend back through Earth's entire history. They've been there since the planet formed." Admiral Kexon felt another piece of his memory slip away. Something about his first promotion, but he forced himself to focus on Vexmore's words. "You're saying Earth has been protected this entire time." "Protected isn't the right word. It's more like prepared. These temporal structures form a defensive matrix around the entire solar system. Our Chronos weapon didn't malfunction. It was deliberately redirected back at us." Commander Yalesh, who could no longer remember her parents' names but still retained her tactical training, studied the energy readings. If these defenses have existed for billions of years, who could have built them? Humans have only been spacefaring for a few centuries. Vexmore was pulling up historical data, though more files were disappearing from the ship's computers with each passing moment. "I'm detecting similar patterns around other human colony worlds. But here's what's truly disturbing. The complexity of these structures increases the closer we get to present day. They're evolving, learning, growing more sophisticated." "Learning from what?" Kexon demanded. "From us. From every weapon we've used against humanity, every tactic we've employed. These temporal defenses have been studying our methods for decades, preparing for exactly this kind of attack." The implications hit Kexon like a physical blow. The Zephyrian Empire had assumed humanity's survival was due to luck and stubborn resistance. But what if every victory the humans had achieved, every impossible escape from certain destruction, had been guided by this ancient protective system? "Sir!" Yalesh called out, her voice cracking with strain. I'm reading massive temporal distortions approaching from Earth. Something big is coming through the Chronos field. On the main viewer, space itself began to ripple around Earth like disturbed water. The geometric patterns were pulsing faster now, building towards some kind of crescendo. Then, emerging from the temporal distortion like a ship rising from an ocean of time, came something that made the surviving Zephyrians gasp in recognition and terror. It was a battleship, but not like any vessel in current human fleets. This ship was sleek and powerful, built with technology that seemed decades ahead of anything humanity currently possessed. Its hull gleamed with the same temporal energy that surrounded Earth, and along its sides were markings in languages that predated known human writing. "Impossible," Vexmore whispered. "That ship it's from the future. From a timeline where humanity has advanced far beyond their current level. How can a future ship be here now?" Yalesh asked, though even as she spoke, she was beginning to understand the terrifying truth. "Because," Kexmore said slowly, "when we tried to erase Earth's past, we created a temporal loop. The future humans who built these defenses sent this ship back through time to ensure their own existence. They've been protecting their past selves all along." The future human vessel moved with impossible grace, its temporal drives allowing it to exist in multiple moments simultaneously. As it approached Battle Station Omega, communication channels crackled to life. The voice that came through spoke perfect Zephyrian, though with an accent none of them recognized. "Zephyrian forces, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Temporal Defense Corps vessel Chronos Guardian. You have attempted to commit genocide against the human species through temporal warfare. Under the temporal accords established by the Galactic Council of 2847, you are hereby ordered to surrender immediately." Kexton found his voice, though speaking was becoming more difficult as his memories continued to fade. "There is no Galactic Council. Humans don't have temporal technology." "Not yet," came the reply. "But they will. We are humanity's future, sent back to protect our past. Your weapon has created the very timeline we needed to exist. Every Zephyrian who is erased from history makes our future more secure." The cool irony of their situation became crystal clear. By trying to prevent humanity's rise, the Zephyrians had caused it. Their temporal weapon had created the exact conditions needed for humans to develop advanced Chronos technology centuries ahead of schedule. "We can stop this," Vexmore said desperately. "If we shut down our weapon, we can break the loop." "Negative," Captain Chen's voice replied. "The temporal cascade is now self-sustaining. Your species' erasure from history is irreversible, but we are prepared to offer terms." "What terms?" Kexton asked, though he could feel his authority slipping away as more of his past was deleted. "Surrender unconditionally. Allow the remaining Zephyrian survivors to be relocated to a protected timeline where you never develop temporal weapons. You will exist, but as a peaceful species under human protection." Yalesh looked around the command center, where only a handful of officers remained. Half the ship's crew had been erased, and more were vanishing every few minutes. Soon, even these survivors would forget they had ever been warriors. "And if we refuse," she asked, "then you fade away completely. Your empire, your culture, your entire species becomes nothing more than a footnote in the cosmic background radiation. Choose quickly. You have perhaps an hour before the temporal cascade reaches your homeworld formation." Kexton felt the weight of an impossible decision. Submit to the species they had tried to destroy, or face complete extinction from history itself. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders, their faces showing the strain of trying to remember who they were and why they were fighting. But as he opened his mouth to respond, another voice crackled through the communications array. This one was older, more weathered, speaking with the authority of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall. "Captain Chen, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Temporal Defense Corps, Senior Timeline. Belay that offer. We've detected something else in the Chronos field, something that predates both our species." The older voice that had interrupted the surrender negotiations belonged to someone who sounded remarkably similar to the captain of the Chronos Guardian, but weathered by decades of temporal warfare. Admiral Sarah Chen of the Senior Timeline spoke with the calm authority of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire galactic civilizations. "Captain Chen, you are authorized to maintain position, but do not accept any Zephyrian surrender at this time. We have detected chronos signatures that predate the formation of this galaxy. Something ancient has been awakened by that temporal weapon. Dr. Vexmore, despite the growing gaps in his memory, recognized the implications immediately. Admiral Kexton, if there are temporal entities older than both our species, we may have stumbled into something far beyond our understanding. Kexton tried to focus on the conversation, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. He could no longer remember his childhood, his training at the Imperial Academy, or even the names of most of his crew. Yet somehow, his tactical instinct remained sharp. "What exactly are you detecting?" he transmitted to the human vessels. Admiral Sarachen's response came after a long pause. "We're reading temporal signatures that date back approximately 13 billion years. Whatever these entities are, they were manipulating space-time when the universe was barely formed, and your weapon appears to have gotten their attention." On the main viewer, the space around Earth was changing again. The geometric patterns that had redirected the Zephyrian Chronos weapon were shifting, rearranging themselves into new configurations. But now, emerging from a quantum foam of space-time itself, came structures so massive and alien that they defied comprehension. They looked like crystalline mountains made of pure mathematics, each one the size of a small moon. Their surfaces reflected not light, but time itself, showing glimpses of past and future events flickering across their facete exteriors. As more of these temporal entities materialized, the very nature of local space-time began to warp and bend around them. "Dear gods," whispered Commander Yalesh, though she could no longer remember which gods her people had worshipped. "What are those things?" Captain Chen of the Chronos Guardian responded first. "We call them the architects. They are the entities who designed the fundamental laws of temporal mechanics when the universe was young. They've been dormant for billions of years, but massive temporal disruptions like your weapon can wake them up." Dr. Vexmore was frantically scanning the massive entities with his remaining instruments. "They are not just observing us. They are evaluating. These readings suggest they are analyzing every temporal manipulation that's occurred in this sector for the past 1,000 years. Including our expansion through time," Admiral Chen added grimly. "The architects don't distinguish between species. To them, we're all just primitive children playing with forces beyond our comprehension." The largest of the crystalline entities began to emit a sound that wasn't quite sound, a harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate through the quantum substrate of reality itself. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, as if the universe itself was speaking. "Temporal children, you have violated the fundamental laws of causality. Your manipulation threatened the stability of space-time itself." Kexton felt a terror deeper than the fear of his own erasure. These entities existed on a scale beyond imagination, their power making both human and Zephyrian technology look like stone knives and bearskins. "We didn't know," he transmitted desperately. "We were only trying to defend ourselves." "Ignorance is not absolution. You have created temporal paradoxes that risk unraveling local reality. This cannot be permitted to continue." The architect began to move, their massive forms causing reality to ripple around them. Where they passed, space-time itself became more stable, more ordered. The chaotic temporal energies unleashed by the Zephyrian weapon began to calm and organize themselves. But this stabilization came at a cost. As the architects restored temporal order, they began erasing all evidence of advanced Chronos technology from this region of space. The human ships from the future started to flicker, their existence becoming uncertain. "No!" Captain Chen's voice was filled with panic. "They are undoing our entire timeline. If they erase our temporal technology, we'll never be able to come back and protect Earth in the first place." A temporal paradox within a paradox, Vexmore observed with a detached fascination of a scientist watching his own destruction. The architects are creating a causality loop that will prevent any species in this sector from developing advanced Chronos capabilities. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the communications array one final time. "All vessels, prepare for timeline collapse. We're being edited out of history, just like the Zephyrians." Kexton watched as the human ships from the future became increasingly translucent, their crews fighting desperately to maintain their existence in a timeline that was rapidly forgetting them. But he also noticed something else. The temporal cascade that had been erasing his own people was slowing down, stabilizing. "Doctor," he said urgently, Are the architects preserving us? Vexmore checked his readings, his scaled hands shaking with exhaustion. It appears so. They are restoring our timeline to a point just before we develop temporal weapons. We'll exist, but as a species that never discovered Chronos technology. And the humans? The same fate. They'll develop normally, but they'll never achieve temporal manipulation. Both species will be locked into conventional space-time, prevented from ever again threatening the stability of the universe. The largest architect turned its attention to Battle Station Omega, its presence filling the command center with an overwhelming sense of ancient wisdom and cosmic authority. You will be preserved, but contained. Your species will continue to exist and evolve, but will never again develop the capability to manipulate time. This is our decree. Kexon felt reality shifting around him one final time, but this change was different from the chaotic erasure they had experienced before. This was ordered, purposeful, like a master craftsman repairing a damaged work of art. His memories were returning, but altered. The Zephyrian Empire still existed, still controlled hundreds of worlds. But now he remembered developing energy weapons instead of temporal ones, conquering through conventional military might rather than Chronos manipulation. In this new timeline, humanity remained a stubborn, creative species that had expanded to hundreds of worlds. The war between their civilization continued, but it was fought with lasers and missiles, ships and soldiers, not with weapons that could unravel reality itself. As the architect began to fade back into the quantum foam, their work complete, Kexon realized the profound irony of their situation. In trying to erase humanity from history, the Zephyrians had saved them from a far worse fate, and saved themselves as well. 6 months after the temporal intervention, as historians would later call it, Admiral Kexon stood in his ready room aboard the heavy cruiser Dominion's Edge, studying intelligence reports about human defensive installations around Earth. The memories felt strange in his head, like looking at someone else's life through a slightly distorted lens. He remembered building the great battle station that had orbited this system, but now it had been a conventional weapons platform rather than housing some impossible temporal device. The war against humanity continued, but it was a clean war fought with energy weapons and tactical genius rather than reality-warping technology that could erase species from existence. "Admiral," came the voice of Commander Yalish over the intercom. "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They are requesting a parley under flag of truce." Kexon nodded, though something deep in his mind whispered that this moment felt significant in ways he couldn't quite grasp. Put them through to the main screen. The face that appeared belonged to a middle-aged human female with graying hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to hold depths of knowledge beyond her years. She wore the uniform of a human fleet admiral, though Kexon noticed subtle differences from the standard designs he was familiar with. "Admiral Kexon, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. I believe we need to discuss something that officially never happened." The word sent a chill down Kexon's spine. "I'm not sure I understand your meaning, Admiral Chen." "I think you do. Tell me, do you ever have dreams about impossible weapons that could reach back through time itself? Do you wake up with memories of watching your people fade from existence, being erased from history by forces beyond comprehension?" Kexon said nothing, but his 4 eyes betrayed his recognition. He had been having exactly those dreams for months now, vivid nightmares that felt more real than his waking memories. Admiral Chen continued, her voice gentle but urgent. "The architects did their work well, but they couldn't completely erase the quantum impressions left by the original timeline. Some of us remember, Admiral. Not clearly, not completely, but enough to understand what almost happened. Even if such impossible events had occurred," Kexon replied carefully, "why would it matter now? Our species are still at war. Because we learned something important from what never happened. Both our civilizations came within moments of complete annihilation, not from each other, but from our own arrogance. We thought we could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe without consequences." Chen leaned forward, her expression intense. "Admiral, I remember being aboard a ship from the future, watching my own timeline collapse because we had developed technology we weren't wise enough to use responsibly. And you remember trying to erase my species from history, only to discover that the universe itself has guardians we never knew existed." Kexon felt the weight of those phantom memories. the terror of watching his empire dissolve, the humbling encounter with entities so ancient and powerful that both human and Zephyrian technology seemed like children's toys in comparison. "What are you proposing?" he asked. "A new kind of war," Chen replied. "A conflict fought with honor, with limits, with rules that ensure neither side risks awakening forces beyond our comprehension again. We can continue our struggle for territory and resources, but we do it as civilized species who understand the true scale of the universe we inhabit." Kexton studied the human admiral's face. In his dreams, he remembered another version of himself standing on a bridge as reality collapsed around him, making an impossible choice between surrender and extinction. That version had learned wisdom through terror and loss. "You're suggesting we formalize a war between our species." "I'm suggesting we acknowledge that we're not the supreme powers we thought we were. There are forces in this universe that make our conflicts look like squabbles between children. If we fight knowing that there are lines we must never cross again." Kexton considered this proposal. The Zephyrian Empire's goal had always been expansion and dominance, but the phantom memory suggested there were forms of power too dangerous to pursue. Perhaps there was wisdom in accepting limitations. "What would such an arrangement look like?" he asked. Admiral Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked like someone who had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, who understood the long arc of galactic history. Formal rules of engagement, prohibited technologies, protected zones, a framework that lets us continue our conflict without risking another intervention. Over the following hours, the two admirals discussed the parameters of what would become known as the Chen-Kexton Accords. Neither side would develop temporal weapons, dimensional manipulation technology, or reality-altering devices. Civilian populations would be protected. Certain star systems would be declared neutral zones. Most importantly, both species would establish joint monitoring stations to watch for signs of technologies that might again draw the attention of the architects. As their negotiations continued, both leaders were struck by how natural this felt, as if they were remembering an agreement rather than creating one. In some timeline that had never quite existed, perhaps wiser versions of themselves had learned these lessons through suffering and loss. "There's one more thing," Admiral Chen said as their discussions drew to a close. "The dreams, the phantom memories, they are not going away. If anything, they are getting stronger. I think the architects wanted us to remember just enough to ensure this never happens again." Kexton nodded. "A safeguard built into the temporal restoration itself. We remember our hubris so we don't repeat it." "Exactly. And that means both our species will carry the weight of what we almost did, what we almost became. It's a responsibility as much as a warning." As the transmission ended and both fleets began their withdrawal from the disputed system, Kexton reflected on the strange nature of their situation. They were locked in an eternal war that would continue across the centuries, but it would be a different kind of conflict now, one tempered by the knowledge that some victories came at costs too terrible to contemplate. In the end, the weapon they had built to erase Earth had instead erased their innocence, their certainty that power was its own justification. The Zephyrian Empire would continue to expand among the stars, and humanity would continue to resist with their characteristic stubborn creativity. But both species would do so with the understanding that they were small players in a universe far stranger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The war would go on, but it would be fought by civilizations that had learned wisdom through the experience of almost ceasing to exist at all. And in the quantum foam of space-time, ancient entities watched and waited, guardians of reality itself, ensuring that the children of the galaxy would never again come so close to destroying everything in their reach for power over time itself. Chat controls Sonnet 4.